Hey, Mr. Clark here. If you are a teacher and you're interested in a tutorial on how to use this website, then you're in the right place. So stay tuned. Hey friends, my name is Mr. Clark and I was asked to share some of this with you guys. I just want to start off with just saying how much I admire, everything that you guys do. I will always support teachers that do what's best for their students. That's the number one thing, and I just want to share some of the things that I plan on doing that you are welcome to incorporate or not. This is going to be currently my 16th year as a professional educator. I am a national board certified teacher, and I am currently taking instructional technology at Coastal Carolina. I work on curriculum for Horry County Schools, and I also work on the assessment team for Horry County Schools for 8th grade science. So what I want to do is just share with you this entire resource. So as I developed this, I had every intention on just allowing it to be accessible for anybody who's interested, and I certainly would understand if you guys adapt it to and use it however best fits your students, because that would be the most appropriate thing to do. My number one goal right from go was if we're going to be weaving in and out of a hybrid situation or a remote situation or even a traditional school situation, I feel like it's so important that we are consistent, not only for students' success, but certainly for parents and also ourselves. Like, I think having a consistent program would be really, really important. I don't want the curriculum for me personally to just abruptly shift depending on what condition we find ourselves in, whether it be hybrid, remote, or traditional. So I felt like consistency was necessary, first for students, certainly for parents, and even myself. I think it's going to make the school year certainly a lot more efficient and effective for everybody involved. I think one mistake that a teacher could make would be to try to translate what we would do in a traditional classroom to a hybrid or remote situation. I think that is something that it doesn't translate very well. So I think if you are, trying to put a square peg in a round hole and trying to fit what you would do in a traditional classroom in a hybrid or a remote situation, I think it's going to lead to frustration. And again, this is my opinion. I think it would lead to frustration for you and ultimately your students. And so I don't recommend trying to fit a traditional style in a remote and hybrid situation. So how this works is that students are essentially working on weekly modules. So students will become aware of what's expected of them weekly, and then their learning outcomes and expectations will be the same process with different content each week. So what you can see here is for Unit 1, we have 9 weeks, and this completely follows the Horry County Schools curriculum. So week 1 through 9 is precisely the same weeks. There's a little bit of shift there, but it's ultimately the same pace as the Horry County Schools curriculum map, which like I mentioned earlier, I worked on. So what I did was I actually took what we did for the curriculum map and translated it here in a way that would work in a remote or hybrid situation. I also incorporated my own lesson plans over the last couple of years and just weaved in the best that I could get, as well as like my own research. So essentially it's designed in weekly modules. So for any week that you select, I will assign my students, hey, we're working on week 4, which would literally be week 4 in the school year. There is, clear expectations, there's hooks, there's background connections, introductions to engage them, focus on essential questions, help them set goals, and there's also, presentation overviews. Students will navigate through using these buttons, and that will take them to individual content topics. So all of these words are hyperlinked, all the tier 2 and tier 3 words. And all this text and images and videos were carefully selected. There's reflections to help focus them during the videos, short summaries for each topic, and then short little knowledge checks that just help students see if they understand what they were supposed to learn during that particular topic. But these are just fun and not required. So students navigate through these topics, and what will happen is they will then land at their weekly assignments. So one thing I want to share with you guys is how I actually design these assignments. So this would be the content that kids are expected to do, and I'll tell them each day what topics I would expect them to complete. So here we are for week number 4 module, the assignments that students would be required to do. So the way I organized this is I actually started this entire module with the learning outcomes. So what I did is I actually would look at the SEP. I would look at this SEP and I would say, all right, what are the learning outcomes? And then I would design activities for each level of Bloom's. So you have comprehension, application, analysis, evaluation, and creation. Knowledge is actually the topic, so there's not like a knowledge level of exercise. The knowledge is the topics. So I started with the Bloom's activities, and then I developed the topics to support these activities. Now, some of this theory is a little bit complex, but in the end, it actually isn't. So what will happen is I will ask students to complete a required assessment or assignment each week. So they'll have one of these a week. My CP course will be recommended to complete this. My honors course will be recommended to complete this. These are just selected activities from the Bloom's here. The reason why I'm incorporating Bloom's is for this reason. If a student is not successful at completing this recommended assignment, then what I would do is they would be instructed to complete an assignment at a lower level to accommodate and differentiate their instruction to replace this grade. So the reasoning, that's the reasoning for it, is to give me an opportunity to differentiate. So that's exactly what will happen if a student is not successful at this or wants to improve their grade. They got a 60 on it, or an F, or even a B. If they want to improve on that grade, they work at a different level. Now, eventually, in my dreams, what will happen is I won't put a suggestion here at all. What I would really like to happen is I would say for CP, you must complete an activity at application or higher and allow them to have the choice. And for honors, I'll say, hey, you got to complete an activity at analysis or higher and let them choose, because student choice is definitely going to help them keep them engaged. But for now, I'm making suggestions, and this is important for you guys as well, because you could choose a totally different suggestion. But ultimately, my goal is that students actually have a choice, and that's what this Bloom's is for 2 reasons: the differentiation piece and also for student choice. So let's talk about the assignments. Each week, they're going to be expected to complete a low-level assignment, which will be a Google Form quiz that's 100% based on the assigned Pearson Interactive Workbook reading. So not only do kids get the content knowledge topics from this website, but they're also instructed to complete these readings. This quiz is 100% taken straight up out of that book. There's no tricks to it. You know, kids are certainly able to Google the answers, and sometimes that'll land you the right answer and sometimes it won't, but it's an open book, 1 attempt, right out of the book quiz, and that will be their low-level grade. And I know that sounds strange, but these are low-stake quizzes. It's just assessing, what they're doing in that book and making sure that they're getting some of the content out of that book. They're mid-level grades. And again, this is just for me, and I might adjust it as well for my students, but my mid-level grades will be discussion topics. And the discussion topics are really important because this is where kids are going to be interacting with one another, and it's going to keep them engaged and want them to come back. These discussions have real-world applications. They're going to be required to have their initial response by Wednesday evening, and then they're going to be required to have 2 or more replies by Sunday evening. And this is going to help develop their writing. It's going to help develop how they 21st century collaborate and work with one another. There's a lot of reasons why students socially interacting with the content is going to benefit them and their learning, and especially in a remote and hybrid situation where they're going to be isolated a little bit more. So the reason why this needs to be a mid-level grade for me is because how they engage in this topic is totally dependent on the topics that I'm providing them and the content that I'm providing them. And it's also much more in depth and requiring them to essentially apply or at a higher level the content that I'm giving them. The assessments are they vary from week to week to keep them engaged. There's all sorts of products that they need to make. So sometimes they're making Google Slides presentations. Sometimes they're using Adobe Spark. Sometimes they're making infographics. Sometimes they're using digital storytelling. It totally depends on what the SEP was and what they needed to accomplish. So this is why, sometimes the CPUP labs do accomplish this SEP, and I do recommend the labs, but the labs are always available to you. So no matter what module you land in, you're going to see that there are CPUP options for students and or teachers. So those are absolutely there for you to utilize at any time. So if you want to completely follow the digital notebooking program, you would be assigning, this for your students. Another thing that I wanted to share with you guys is that there's this search feature, so you can search for any words. You could also search for weeks, and this will take you there. So I made sure that this search feature was available for students and teachers. Alright, so another thing I wanted to share with you guys is obviously we're going to use Google Classroom to assign these things. So just to go back to the assignments, this Google form will be on Google Classroom. The discussion, they'll be linked through Google Classroom, and then these assignments will be assigned in Google Classroom. So what I will do on Google Classroom is I will also have a link to this website where students will access CP or honors depending on what class they're in. And what I'm going to use is this live document on a Google Sites where it just outlines what kids should be doing each day of the week. It's kind of like just a guide. And, obviously these are all links to what they would need. And then this, kids would be able to access each week and look at what they're expected to do each week. But what's brilliant is this will essentially be almost the same program. On Monday, I'm going to ask them to review the topics. On Tuesday, I'm going to ask them to, work on their reading and complete the topics. On Wednesday, do their quiz from the book and also do their initial response for their discussion. Thursday, I want them to begin the assignment, and Friday they complete their replies for the discussion and also turn in their assignment by Sunday at 11:59. It's pretty much going to be the same program every time. I'm just going to change this link, and I'm going to, just guide kids depending on what I'm observing. So where kids need more support, I'm going to give them more support. So I wanted to share this with you. All of this is accessible through the website, so this is available to you if you want to utilize this. The website is created for any teacher to use. I know I included some personal things in there, like my welcome page, but that's just to make it so that it doesn't seem so robotic. So there's some sort of like connection for kids, because that's so necessary. So another thing that I wanted to share with you guys is there's a lot of information in here that you guys could use or just straight up use this website. It's all good. is these teacher resources down here. If you're interested in the instructional frameworks that I used and why I did what I did with, the educational pedagogy, you should go here. But I wanted to share with you the teacher resources because there's some things in here that you guys might want to use. Here are links to the digital notebooks. If you guys are going to go the digital notebook route, you could certainly incorporate the digital notebooks along with this website if you want to utilize the labs. I do want to highlight this Verso thing because I'm going to be using Verso for the online discussions. You could absolutely use Google Classroom, but there's a reason why I'm not. Verso is a tremendous program that helps kids develop their writing skills, helps them collaborate with one another. It's super engaging, and most importantly, it is so easy to assess. I can easily click on any student, see their initial response, see what vocabulary they're using, and I can see their replies, and within a glance see that it's appropriate and at a reasonable level. And I highly recommend Verso because I knew I was going to be using discussions to keep the social aspect of the course as high as I can, because kids need that, especially in middle school. And I had to find the right program that's going to allow not only students to be engaged, but also, most importantly, that I could easily monitor and assess. And Verso is it. So there's some information about Verso and how to use it here, but once you get into it, it's not so hard to use whatsoever. In fact, that's exactly why I'm using it, is because it's so easy. There's a lot of other resources in here, like this here is links to all of the Google form quizzes for the readings. So if you want to go here, you can download the Google Forms and adjust them as you see fit. Just don't share that with students because they could essentially download them and get the answer keys. I don't want them to know that, but I did want to make sure that I had access for that for you guys here. There's other digital agendas that I put available on here, but like I said, I'm going to use this one I developed, and it's just going to be that easy for me to just send this out each day for students to recommend what they could work on. But obviously they can do these things at any way that they want, as long as they do it by Sunday evening and they have their initial response by Wednesday. So back to the website for a moment. I just want to make sure that you guys were aware of some of these other resources that are here for you. Another thing that I wanted you guys to be aware of is that after each module, and this is available for students as well, there's a spot for feedback. So if you give me your name and your email and tell me what week you're talking about, tell me how to make these modules better, and I will. I will do exactly that. Any typos, broken links, unengaging, bad activities, bad discussion, you have a better discussion, anything at all, these will go directly to my email. So I would appreciate any feedback that you give me. And another important detail is that this entire website can be completely accessed from a mobile device. So kids can have this available to them at all times if they have internet access. So that was one detail that's super important, is that if kids don't have access to a computer at home, or they have a difficult situation, they can literally do this all on their mobile device and utilize Google extensions and applications and apps to translate or provide more access. They could put in their headphones and listen even in a loud environment. So that's part of what this website is about, is making this course as accessible and consistent and also as effective as possible. So, in theory, everything is built off of these learning outcomes. So I started with the learning outcomes, and then I developed the topics and the content after that. And all of those outcomes are dependent on these SEPs, and that's where the labs might not always hit. So depending on what the SEP is determining what I'm having my students do. So even though my kids might not be doing labs 5 days a week, what they're actually ultimately doing is achieving the same learning outcome, maybe even more effectively, and also giving students more. It's more of a student-centered approach, which they might find more engaging and also more authentic, and help them actually internalize some of this compared to some of the traditional things that we used to do in the classroom. So here, as it sits now, I made sure that all of Unit 1 was completed. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be rolling out Unit 2. I'm pretty deep into Unit 2 already. And then I'm just going to be rolling out like a module a week, way ahead of time. So as soon as school starts, I'm going to be, working on, I'll be up to even Unit 3 by then. So the modules will roll out, but I might not unlock them until we get there, so students just have only the opportunity to work through Unit 1, because they can work ahead, and I encourage them to. If they want to, work on this course, it's something that they're interested in doing, and they want to go through it and do it and ask for help and be ahead of the game, I encourage it. There's nothing wrong with that. It doesn't scare me. But then I'll probably unlock Unit 2 all at once, so that it'll be kind of the same process. But I promise these modules will be there for you guys. So just to kind of summarize, I really admire you as teachers. What we're going to accomplish this year is extraordinary. I am always going to support teachers that are going to do what's best for their students, 100%. And what I shared with you today, I hope only maybe gives you at least some bits that you guys may incorporate because you feel like it's best for your students. And you could also completely adopt this entire process. Whatever is best for your students is what I support. And I hope that what I'm sharing with you guys find valuable, and I would always appreciate your feedback to make this as best for kids as completely possible. So thank you for your time, and I really appreciate all you guys do. Take care.